Hi, my name is Maggie McDermott, and for my Capstone project, I decided to focus on structured learning environments. For my competency statement, I said that I am competent in creating a collaborative learning environment in order to provide students with opportunities to learn from one another. The questions I had guiding me towards my competency statement is one, how I can promote a safe environment for all students, so providing for their physical, emotional, and intellectual well-being. And number two, how I can value and extend the learning that students bring from home, community, and other social environments. So looking at my first piece of evidence, I have classroom arrangement. I believe the way a classroom is arranged allows community to be built in a much stronger way so that students are able to better communicate with one another the way their classroom is arranged. So looking at my first artifact, I have an artifact from one of my very first teaching experience, or my student teaching classes. And it was for TEAC 351 Learner Center Classrooms. And in that class, we watched a YouTube video about how to set up your classroom, whether it was your desk or in a U-shape, or in traditional rows, or in groups or clusters. And on my reflection, I focused on having desks in groups or clusters. And what I realized a lot of the negative parts of it, saying that students are looking at each other, that it would cause a lot more distraction during class and a lot of interruptions. But the one positive thing that I did see in setting up desks in groups or clusters is that students are able to communicate and collaborate a lot more easy by being able to be already looking at each other, ready to go for collaborative conversation and collaborative work. So in my student teaching experience, I was in 4th grade classroom, and at the beginning of the year, we just got the Wonders Reading curriculum. And in that curriculum, there is a lot of opportunities for collaborative work, but the way our classroom was set up in traditional rows with desks, that it was not conducive for collaborative work. And so I talked to my CT about putting our desks in groups, and I noticed almost automatically that students were able to communicate a lot easier by looking each other in the eye instead of being in the traditional rows where students are craning their necks, looking at each other, not being able to really have that natural flow of collaborative work. And so when I established that, I moved on then to my second piece of evidence, which is community building activities. So by incorporating community builders in the classroom, students are able to better trust and communicate with one another by being able to practice these skills through fun activities. And so here I have an article from my TEAC 380 class, Health and Wellness, where we talk a lot about how to build that positive classroom environment. And in this article by Dr. Kagan, he talks about a lot of how by building these classroom environments, positive classroom environments, students are able to trust each other more. They're able to feel safe. So going back to my first question of how students can, how I can provide a safe learning environment for my students. So by building those classroom building activities for my students, students are able then to feel safe, to feel secure in their classroom, which then will automatically kind of have that collaborative work. So here throughout the presentation, I do have surveys from students because collaborative work is getting different ideas. And so I knew that I wanted to incorporate my students' opinions on how they felt about collaborative work, having their desk in groups, or here having a community building activity. So here I have some surveys from students, and they said they really loved doing those community builder activities in classroom because they got to know each other more. And they were able to build that community. So here I have my artifact from my student teaching experience. I did every morning, I wrote on a prompt on the board, a writing prompt that said, like, make a change Monday, how can you make the world awesome? So they write on either on a sticky note or write it directly on the board. And they were able then to read each other's responses. And the students really enjoyed being able to learn more about each other, even if it's silly questions like, what's the most thrilling thing you've done, or things like that. They just were able to learn about each other more, and they were able to communicate much better in the classroom. And even we as adults, we need to get to know each other more when we feel even comfortable to share things. And so students are the same way, our elementary students are the same way. So by building the physical environment of the classroom, then moving on to building that positive atmosphere in the classroom, then I'm able to then promote collaborative conversations within my lessons. So collaborative conversations is vital to creating a collaborative learning environment. Teachers need to give students opportunities to talk with one another in order to provide them with chances to use the important skill of collaborating. And so looking at my past experience in my lit practicum, I have a reflection from a lesson plan that I did with my second graders, and it was a reading lesson, and the students were asked to turn to a partner, and I would give them a question to talk about, or turn to someone behind them and talk to them about a question that I would provide. And what I noticed very quickly is that students were often off task, that they were not answering the question that I gave them, or on the opposite side of the spectrum, the students that were listening were often dominating the conversations and not listening to their peers give input. And that left me very frustrated as a teacher because I did want to implement collaborative work in the classroom, but it just wasn't happening. And so I knew that when I got into my student teaching experience that I wanted to do a lot more pre-teaching of how to have a collaborative conversation with each other. So in my student teaching classroom, I had these anchor charts posted in the room for collaborative conversations. So some of the different things that I would talk about is how to listen to your group mates by showing eye contact, or by showing that you're listening through your body language. Are you turned towards your partner, whoever's talking? Adding appropriate comments when necessary, and also asking for clarification examples such as, can you repeat this, or can you add on to this? Those positive clarification questions that get the students thinking deeper. This was not going to happen right off the bat. I had to do a lot of practice with them on how to do that. And so we had different questions I would give them, like, if you could be any animal, what would you be and why? And then they would practice using collaborative conversations to share their opinions and thoughts. And that took a couple weeks to kind of get used to, because it was something that wasn't becoming natural to them. And elementary students don't come out just knowing how to have collaborative conversations. And so I had to do a lot of teaching of how to do that. And the students really enjoyed this. Over here on the surveys, the students said that they really liked being able to talk to each other throughout class, and that if they were able to just get new ideas that even I couldn't even provide with them, they were able to learn from one another and have that new understanding. And so by providing the physical environment and providing the positive atmosphere for the classroom, and then also then promoting collaborative conversations, they all work hand in hand. And so we're able to see through reflecting through my evidence. So evidence number one, classroom arrangement, building that community, and collaborative conversations, that I am competent in making a collaborative learning environment for my students. Some of the big ideas that I got from putting this all together is that by providing a classroom in which students are able to feel comfortable and safe in their environment, it really sets the groundwork for a collaborative environment if they're feeling safe and welcome. And then students also need opportunities throughout the day just to learn from one another and be able to talk to each other and get those new ideas and new thoughts. Elementary students are very social beings and they want to talk. So by giving them the right opportunities to talk to one another about topics in your lesson, that gives them that chance to be able to talk with one another. So one of my big aha moments that I had while putting this together is that it really starts with the roots of building that collaborative environment, and that is by the physical environment. So by being able to provide that physical space for the students, then you're able then to have that positive learning environment going on to my community building activities. Then lastly, when all that is coming together, then students are able then to feel free to have collaborative conversations throughout lessons. So what did I learn throughout my whole experience through UNL is that teachers have the amazing gift of being able to enlighten students. However, there are times when teachers need to take a step back and let the students just learn, and that they are able to learn from one another, that some things that I wouldn't be able to teach, they're able to learn from their peers. What do I still want to learn is that the beautiful thing about teaching is that every class is different, every student is different, every year is different. And so being able to be adaptable to every class and every year is huge. And so by setting up your classroom like this, like I did for my student teaching experience, that might work for my student teaching class, but it might not work for my first class that I have. Or this community building activity might work for one class, but it might not work for another one. So being able to be adaptive is something that I'll always be learning how to do. And so as I wrap up, one of the big goals that I have for myself as a teacher is to be aware and intentional about the best way to provide and pre-teach and reinforce collaborative conversations in the classroom, to be adaptable, and so being able to know how to best plan for collaborative conversations. All students are able to handle collaborative conversations. It's just how am I going to modify that so that students are able to do that. Thank you.